How's it going, everyone? This is George here, and I just got home from seeing Avatar: The Way of Water, and I can't wait to share my thoughts with you guys. So, here we go. Here's my review of Avatar: The Way of Water. This film was directed by James Cameron, who is also known for not only directing the first Avatar film, but also directing Terminator and Terminator 2: Judgment Day, Aliens, Titanic, True Lies, and The Abyss. And in this film, more than a decade after the events of the first Avatar film, Jake Sully now has a family, he has children, but the Sky People, also known as humans, are coming back, as well as the Colonel with his own avatar, played by Stephen Lang once again. So Jake Sully must take his family to somewhere else to protect them, and also learning from not just the new tribe, but also the Way of Water. So this film took quite a while to come out. In fact, for many years, we never thought we were going to see Avatar 2. We just kept hearing James Cameron say, oh, it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And filming for this film started back in 2017, so we've been waiting for this film for a long time, even from when it started filming. And some of us were wondering, is it worth the wait? Because I get it, some people think the first Avatar film is very overrated. I like the first Avatar film. It's not the best movie ever. It does kind of have a generic story, but I very much enjoy the film and think it's very good. And we kept hearing not just about Avatar 2, but Avatar 3, 4, all these other Avatar movies. So, was Avatar: The Way of Water worth the wait? I would say it definitely was. This film is, in my opinion, an upgrade from the first film. Now, I know I hear some people saying they prefer the first film over this. There's also some people like me that prefer Avatar: The Way of Water over the first film. I definitely would say, as of right now, I prefer this film over the first film, even though this film is longer and it's not a perfect movie. But one of the things that I appreciate when it comes to James Cameron is he understands sequels very well. That's basically where his strong suits are. Terminator 2: Judgment Day is not just one of the best sequels of all time, it's one of my favorite all time movies. Aliens, I'm one of those people that prefers Aliens over the first Alien film. And that was a sequel to a film that he didn't even direct. That was Ridley Scott that directed the first Alien film. And with Avatar: The Way of Water, you definitely see the technological advances. You definitely see James Cameron push things. Like visually, this is beautiful. This is a beautifully visual film. The special effects work is incredible. The underwater scenes are also incredible. The underwater scenes in this film are way better than what we saw in Aquaman and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Like James Cameron really pushed the boundaries with the underwater stuff in this film. The motion capture work, similar to the first film, is phenomenal. And yes, like we will say, the story does kind of feel like something we've seen before, similar to the first film. But I will say that I did prefer the story in this film over the first film. And I say that because I feel like this story in this film, while it is predictable, while it is a story we've seen multiple times before, it also has its own unique takes and twists to it compared to other versions. So I would definitely say that this has a better story, or at least a story that I prefer. Acting wise, Zoe Saldana as Neytiri is still phenomenal as always. Stephen Lang as the Colonel, who's now got his own avatar. Very good villain, not the best villain, but still very good villain. I actually think he did better work as the villain in this film. I'm not giving any spoilers out, by the way. This film recently came out, so I'm not going to spoil anything. But yeah, Stephen Lang really does a good job. And when I heard he was coming back as the villain, I was really worried because, like, if spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the first Avatar film, he was killed. So then you hear, oh, he's gonna come back. He's gonna have his own avatar. How's this gonna work? Is it just gonna be like a repeat of the first film? And surprisingly, I felt like they didn't repeat the story with that character. So I'm glad they didn't do that and add their own twists to it. Sigourney Weaver is back in the film, but she's not playing Dr. Grace. She's actually playing her daughter, who is the adopted daughter of Jake Sully. And I would say like she does a very good job. I prefer her as her character from the first film, from Grace, but I still think she did a very good job. She's playing a much younger character in this film, as the daughter is a teenager in this film. I will say the acting performance that definitely stood out in this film compared to the first film was Sam Worthington as Jake Sully. I think he did a much better job in this film. His story arc is a lot more different. He went from being the paralyzed soldier that didn't know what to do to this family man, this father that's trying to protect his family, and he's also a bit tough on one of his sons. And that's another thing. The family in this film, like I thought, like the kids were gonna when Jake Sully's kids were gonna be annoying, but honestly they weren't. Like even the second son that is kind of the the child that sticks out because he's the one that tends to disobey his father a lot. I thought like, oh boy, we've seen this before. But even the second oldest son, I thought was a very good, interesting character. And then you also have this human character named Spider. I'm not gonna give much spoilers with him, but he's this human that was like born during the events of the first Avatar film. But he prefers Pandora over being a human. He rather hang out with Jake Sully and his family. And at first, I thought this was going to be a character that was going to get on my nerves, but he honestly didn't. And that's one thing I appreciate about James Cameron films. Characters that you think are going to get on your nerves actually don't get on your nerves. It's kind of like a bait and switch kind of thing. It's like he's making the audience dread these characters, but then it turns out, oh, these characters are actually likable and very interesting. The how the creatures look, how creatures look. There's obviously some new creatures in this film, look amazing. The score is phenomenal. I very much enjoyed the score of this film, and and obviously this is a James Cameron movie, not just because it's taking elements from the first Avatar, but you also see elements from some of his other work. Titanic and The Abyss are two other movies that are more water themed movies, and you definitely see elements of Titanic and The Abyss in this film. And James Cameron does a great job of going back to those roots, especially because it's been 25 years since Titanic came out. It's been over 30 years since The Abyss came out. And it shows that James Cameron still has it, even though he's more focused on these Avatar movies, but his style is still fresh there. And it's also with the action scenes. The action is really good. I actually think the action in this film I enjoyed more than the action from the first film. It feels like more pure James Cameron. Because with the first Avatar film, like you had some James Cameron elements in there, but it feels like he put more of his style in this film than he did in the first film. Now, this is an imperfect movie. This is a 3 hour and 10 minute movie, and I would say the first two acts are paced really well. Yeah, it takes a while for us to obviously get to the water, but I feel like the setup, the explanation of Jake Sully's family, introducing them, introducing how the humans are coming back into Pandora, like that stuff, like I think was paced very well. It was really the third act, and I think the final fight where like it started to drag on. And yeah, the final fight was incredible. I enjoyed it very much, but then something happens after all the fighting where it feels like it's just dragging on. And sometimes it started taking me a bit out of it. And that really shouldn't happen because everything else I felt like was paced very well. But I will say it definitely feels like while this is a longer film than the first Avatar, the action, the build up begins earlier than the first film. But it just feels like the third act was dragging on. And I will definitely say like the setup for an Avatar 3 and the future of Avatar is also done very well. And the 3D worked. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of 3D. I think 3D works for some films like the first Avatar. I also feel like it doesn't work for certain films. Like I remember there was a time where all these animated movies that were coming out in 2009, like in the early 2010s, had to be like in 3D. The 3D is very good in this film as well. James Cameron definitely understands like how to utilize 3D. And by the way, I wouldn't blame James Cameron for like that 3D renaissance that was like going on, or that 3D era that was going on in the 2010s when all the studios were doing it. They were just doing it to make a profit. What it feels like with James Cameron, he was doing it to like make the experience of the film work better. But overall, I would definitely say I enjoyed Avatar: The Way of Water. I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the motion capture work. I thought it looked visually beautiful. I definitely prefer the story in this film over the previous film. It's not James Cameron's best work, but it's definitely not like his worst work. This is definitely like more so in the middle. But James Cameron, like outside of maybe like that Piranha film that was like his first film ever made, which I never saw, so I don't really know how bad that is, but I heard it was bad. James Cameron really hasn't made a bad movie for me. I've really enjoyed all his works. And yeah, I would say the first Avatar and The Abyss are probably my two least favorite films of his, but I still like those films very much and think they're very good. But overall, I'm going to give Avatar The Way of Water an A minus. I highly recommend you go check this out. To me, this is definitely one of the better film experiences in the last couple years. And I'm glad James Cameron took his time for this film because the special effects work alone makes this movie worth it. Because it feels like more recently studios have been rushing their movies and you see the VFX, the special effects just don't look as good as they could, and that's happened with a couple of Marvel films that came out this year. So definitely they took the time to make this movie and they delivered. And even though it's a long movie, I highly recommend you check out Avatar The Way of Water, especially if you love the first film. If you didn't care that much for the first film, I, me personally, and I know other people have said this, I prefer Avatar The Way of Water over the first film. I know some people do as well. But maybe this might not be the movie for you if you didn't care for the first Avatar film. But I highly recommend you check this film out because it is definitely an experience. And I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe already if you haven't. Please share us with someone that loves the first Avatar, that's interested in seeing Avatar The Way of Water, or is also a James Cameron fan. And I hope to see you guys real soon. Take care, everyone.